The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Marcus Aurelius. You have felt it, haven't you? That inexplicable hostility from others that seems to arise from nowhere, the cold stares and sudden animosity that makes no sense in the context of your actions. You wonder what you did wrong, what invisible line you crossed, why certain people seem determined to see you as their enemy. This confusion is the beginning of something important, the recognition that much of what you face in this world has nothing to do with you at all and everything to do with forces you cannot control. Understanding this is the first step toward real power, toward the kind of strength that cannot be shaken by the opinions or hatred of others. The weakness you feel when confronted with unexplained hostility is not a character defect. It is evidence that you still believe the world should make sense, that fairness should prevail, that good intentions should be met with good responses. This naive optimism, while admirable, leaves you vulnerable to the darker currents of human psychology. You must learn to see clearly what drives people to hatred, not to become cynical, but to become prepared. When you understand that someone's hatred of you often has nothing to do with your actions and everything to do with their inner turmoil, you stop taking it personally. This shift from personal to psychological perspective is where your real education begins. The first truth you must accept is that success breeds enemies. Your achievements, your confidence, your very presence can trigger something primal in others, envy dressed as moral judgment. When you excel, when you grow, when you become more than you were, you become a mirror for those who have chosen to remain small. They see in you the possibilities they abandoned, the courage they lack, the discipline they rejected. Their hatred is not really about you, it is about the accusation your existence makes against their choices. This is why mediocrity loves company and why excellence often walks alone. You cannot dim your light to make others comfortable without betraying your own potential. Consider how many men you know who have settled for less than they could become, who have made peace with their limitations, who have found comfort in their excuses. Your refusal to accept the same fate threatens their carefully constructed justifications for their choices. They need to believe that everyone faces the same obstacles they do, that everyone is equally constrained by circumstances, that their failures are inevitable rather than chosen. When you prove otherwise through your actions and achievements, you force them to confront the uncomfortable truth that they chose the easier path. The chaos you encounter when people project their insecurities onto you is the chaos of their inner world made manifest. As Jung understood, we despise in others what we cannot face in ourselves. The man who attacks your integrity struggles with his own dishonesty. The one who questions your motives is haunted by his own hidden agendas. The person who tries to tear down your confidence is drowning in their own self-doubt. When you realize this, their attacks lose their power to wound you because you understand they are not really attacking you at all, they are fighting ghosts from their own psyche. You must learn to read these projections like a psychological map. When someone accuses you of arrogance, ask yourself if they might be struggling with feelings of insignificance. When they criticize your ambition, consider whether they have given up on their own dreams. When they question your methods, examine whether they are paralyzed by their own indecision. This is not about becoming judgmental toward them, it is about developing the emotional intelligence to protect yourself from their unconscious attempts to drag you into their dysfunction. You will feel guilt about this understanding. You will wonder if recognizing these patterns makes you cold, calculating, or arrogant. This guilt is the voice of a society that wants you to remain vulnerable, to stay open to manipulation, to continue absorbing other people's psychological poison without complaint. But wisdom is not cruelty, and understanding human nature is not misanthropy. The man who sees clearly can protect himself without becoming bitter, can maintain his kindness without becoming naive. You are not responsible for healing everyone's wounds or making everyone comfortable with your existence. The guilt you feel often comes from early conditioning that taught you to prioritize other people's comfort over your own well-being. You were taught that being a good person means absorbing criticism without defending yourself, accepting blame you did not earn, and making yourself smaller to accommodate other people's insecurities. This conditioning serves those who benefit from your compliance, but it serves neither your growth nor your authentic contribution to the world. Breaking free from this programming requires you to recognize that your first responsibility is to become who you are meant to be, not who others need you to be. The discipline required for this understanding is not the discipline of endurance. It is the discipline of detachment. You must learn to observe human behavior without immediately personalizing it, to see patterns without becoming cynical, to protect your energy without closing your heart. This requires daily practice in emotional regulation, in choosing your responses rather than simply reacting to provocations. When someone attacks you, pause. Ask yourself what wound they might be protecting, what fear they might be expressing, what inadequacy they might be projecting. This pause creates space between their dysfunction and your peace. As Marcus Aurelius knew from his position of ultimate power, true strength is not about dominating others. It is about maintaining your center regardless of external storms. The man who is easily provoked, who needs to defend himself against every slight, who cannot bear criticism or hostility, is still enslaved to other people's opinions. Real power lies in your ability to remain unmoved by the emotional turbulence of others, to continue your path regardless of who approves or disapproves, to find your validation from internal rather than external sources. This is not indifference, it is sovereignty. The emperor understood that those in positions of authority, those who achieve anything significant, those who refuse to blend into the crowd will inevitably face criticism, envy, and hostility. This is not a bug in the system, it is a feature. It is how mediocrity attempts to pull excellence back down to its level. Your ability to withstand this pressure without being corrupted by it, without becoming bitter or defensive, without abandoning your principles or your path, is the measure of your actual strength. Anyone can be strong when everyone agrees with them. True strength reveals itself in how you handle opposition. You will walk alone more often as you develop this understanding. People who are used to triggering reactions in you will find your new equilibrium unsettling. Those who relied on your emotional availability to process their own issues will accuse you of becoming cold or distant. Some relationships that were built on your willingness to absorb drama or provide constant reassurance will naturally fade. This is not loss, it is liberation. You are making space for connections based on mutual respect rather than codependence, for relationships that enhance your life rather than drain it. This loneliness is not permanent, but it is necessary. You must learn to be comfortable with your own company before you can offer genuine companionship to others. You must develop your own internal compass before you can navigate relationships without losing your way. You must strengthen your own foundation before you can support others without being pulled down by their instability. The man who cannot stand alone will never truly stand with anyone else. He will only lean, creating relationships based on mutual weakness rather than mutual strength. The responsibility you discover is perhaps the heaviest burden and the greatest gift of this journey. You realize that while you cannot control how others perceive you or what emotions you trigger in them, You are completely responsible for how you respond to their reactions. This responsibility extends to your own growth, your own healing, your own development into the man you are meant to become. You cannot use other people's dysfunction as an excuse for your own stagnation, cannot blame their hostility for your failure to progress, cannot let their chaos derail your purpose. This responsibility includes taking ownership of the energy you bring to every interaction. While you cannot control what others project onto you, you can control what you project onto them. You can choose to respond to their dysfunction with compassion rather than contempt, with boundaries rather than retaliation, with understanding rather than judgment. This does not mean accepting abuse or tolerating disrespect. It means maintaining your own integrity regardless of how others choose to behave. Nietzsche spoke of the will to power as the fundamental drive of all life, but most people misunderstand this concept. It is not about power over others, it is about power over yourself, about becoming who you truly are despite external pressures to conform or diminish yourself. When people hate you for your authenticity, for your refusal to play small, for your commitment to growth, they are actually confirming that you are on the right path. Their resistance is evidence that you are breaking free from the collective agreement to remain mediocre. The misunderstandings that arise from poor communication are often less about the failure to convey information and more about the failure to recognize that people hear what they are prepared to hear. Someone dealing with their own shame will interpret your confidence as arrogance. Someone struggling with their own integrity will hear judgment in your straightforward communication. Someone threatened by your growth will find offense in your very presence. You cannot communicate your way out of someone else's psychological problems, cannot explain yourself into their approval, cannot manage their emotional reactions through careful word choice. The differences in values and beliefs that create animosity between people often reveal deeper truths about the nature of personal development. As you grow, you naturally outgrow certain worldviews, certain ways of being, certain comfort zones that others still inhabit. This growth threatens those who have chosen to remain static because it challenges their assumptions about what is possible or necessary. Your evolution becomes an unwelcome reminder of their stagnation. This is why transformation is often a lonely process. You must be willing to leave behind not just old habits, but old alliances based on shared limitations. The rumors and gossip that may circulate about you as you become more authentic and powerful are the weapons of those who cannot compete with you directly. Lao Tzu observed that the superior man is modest in his speech and excessive in his actions, while the inferior man is excessive in his speech and modest in his actions. When people cannot diminish your actual accomplishments, they will attempt to diminish your reputation. When they cannot match your character, they will question your motives. This is not personal, it is strategic. They are trying to level a playing field they cannot win on merit alone. Understanding the projection of insecurities requires you to develop a psychological sophistication that many men never achieve. You must learn to distinguish between legitimate criticism that can help you grow and psychological projection that only reveals the critic's inner state. The former usually comes with specific, actionable feedback and a genuine desire to see you improve. The latter is vague, emotionally charged, and seems more concerned with diminishing you than elevating you. When someone's criticism of you sounds more like a description of their own struggles, you are likely witnessing projection rather than receiving useful feedback. The lack of empathy you encounter from others often reflects their own emotional overwhelm rather than any failure of connection on your part. People who are drowning in their own unprocessed emotions have little capacity to understand or care about yours. They operate from survival mode, seeing others primarily as resources to be used or threats to be neutralized. Your attempts to reason with them, to appeal to their compassion, to create mutual understanding will often fail not because you are inadequate, but because they are not psychologically available for that level of interaction. The competition and rivalry that emerges when you begin to excel reveals something profound about human nature and your place within it. As Seneca understood, we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and much of what people perceive as competition exists primarily in their minds. Your success does not diminish their possibilities, but they experience it as if it does. Their attempts to undermine you stem from a scarcity mindset that sees life as a zero-sum game. You must resist the temptation to play by these rules, to engage in tit-for-tat battles, to prove your superiority through their diminishment. The man who has learned these lessons moves through the world differently. He does not seek to be liked by everyone because he understands that universal approval is impossible and unnecessary. He does not take hostility personally because he recognizes it as information about the other person's inner state rather than judgment about his own worth. He maintains his standards without needing to justify them to those who operate from different values. He continues his growth without permission from those who benefit from his stagnation. This is not about becoming cold or disconnected. It is about becoming discerning, able to distinguish between relationships that nourish your growth and those that drain your energy, between criticism that helps you improve and attacks that only serve to diminish you, between love that accepts your authenticity and approval that demands your conformity. The strong man protects his peace not through aggression but through boundaries, not through isolation but through selective engagement. You begin to realize that much of what you interpreted as personal rejection was actually the natural consequence of your growth threatening other people's comfort zones. Your increasing authenticity challenges their facades. Your commitment to truth makes their self-deceptions uncomfortable. Your willingness to take responsibility makes their victimhood seem less justified. Your progress forces them to confront their own stagnation. In this light, their hostility becomes a backhanded compliment, evidence that you are becoming someone worth envying. The ultimate understanding is that you cannot control how others perceive you, but you can control whether their perceptions control you. The man who needs everyone's approval will never have his own. The man who fears everyone's judgment will never trust his own. The man who tries to manage everyone's emotions will never master his own. Your freedom begins when you accept that being misunderstood, envied, criticized, or even hated by some people is not a problem to be solved but a reality to be accepted. This acceptance does not make you indifferent to human connection or immune to emotional pain. It makes you selective about which connections you prioritize and which pain you choose to feel. You stop trying to win over people who are determined to see you as their enemy. You stop explaining yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop dimming your light to make others comfortable in their darkness. This is not arrogance, it is self-preservation. This is not cruelty, it is wisdom. The journey toward this understanding transforms you from a reactive person who is blown about by every social wind to a centered man who maintains his direction regardless of external weather. You develop what the Stoics called an inner citadel, a core of stability that cannot be breached by other people's chaos, criticism, or hatred. From this place of inner strength, you can engage with the world authentically without being destroyed by its responses to your authenticity. In the end, You discover that the hatred some people feel toward you is often the price of refusing to betray yourself. It is the cost of choosing growth over comfort, authenticity over approval, truth over convenience. This price may seem high when you are paying it, but the alternative, a life lived in service to other people's emotional needs and psychological limitations, is far higher. The man who makes himself small to avoid triggering others' insecurities ends up too small to accomplish anything meaningful, too weak to protect what matters, too diminished to offer anything valuable to the world. You have a choice to make every day. Will you shape yourself according to your own vision or allow yourself to be shaped by other people's reactions? Will you pursue your growth despite the discomfort it creates in others, or will you limit yourself to keep everyone comfortable? Will you take responsibility for becoming the man you are meant to be, or will you remain the man others need you to be? This choice determines not just your happiness, but your character, not just your success, but your integrity, not just your comfort, but your contribution to the world. Choose wisely, because this choice shapes everything else.